So here's part two of the little conversation that I've started today about when God is doing something big in his world. Very often, the role of angels amongst that becomes more clear and more important as they serve his purposes. So, this is just going to be a little simple story that will leave you wondering, perhaps, or will also just reinforce that whenever something big is going on in our world, that God will bring the support that we need so that his purposes will be seen and on display, and that we just get to see his goodness. So, many of you know that my dad had a big, long battle with cancer, and in the last 2 months of his life, I was feeling very isolated from all that was going on for him. I was so far away, I wasn't able to join, um, to be with my family, and so it was quite a hard time. And during that time, I used to just take daily walks, and I would drive to different locations and just walk along a creek or just somewhere where there was water, because I always felt like I could connect to Jesus in a way through my conversation. And so I was walking this one day alongside a creek, and it was on a walking path and a walking trail. And I noticed this guy that was alongside the trail with a white plastic bag. Yep, we wouldn't be seeing that these days, but yeah, he had one of the disposable bags that he was picking things out. And I thought perhaps he's picking mushrooms or picking up rubbish off the trail. Anyway, I kept walking and just processing with Jesus what was going on in my life. And on my return, I just felt intrigued because that guy was still there. So I wandered over to him and just said, "Hey, what are you up to? What are you searching for?" Because he was very focused and intent. And he said to me, "Oh, I breed canaries. And so I'm trying to find the right food to put in their nests for the new canaries that are coming." And so I looked in the bag, and what he was actually collecting were dandelions. You know, the little yellow flowers that grow alongside, or grow everywhere, really. And so I was noticing just that that's weird. So I asked another question. I said, "Why did you choose to breed canaries?" And he said, "Because they sing God's song." He said, "I'm such a blessed man. When the canaries sing, I start to dance like David." Now just pause. I'm on a walk and someone's telling me that they are breeding songsters that are singing God's song, and he dances when that happens. Weird, but intriguing. So as he talked about what it meant to be a blessed man, and he just kept looking up to the sky and saying, and he was actually dancing. I know, he was dancing, saying, "When they sing, I dance. I dance like David." I then asked him, tell me about these plants that you're collecting for them." And he said, "Well, there's a new breed of canaries that are about to come." And he said, "Breeding season's nearly here, and I'm getting ready for the new birds that will arrive." And he started to talk about how many birds he had and how many that had already come, and that this new breed was so much stronger than the previous breed. He talked about needing to build an aviary to house all these beautiful canaries. And he said to me, I needed to make more room for the new ones that are coming. And he told me that he was building his aviary to make it look like a cathedral because they were singing to God. Can you imagine how stunned I was that this was a conversation I was having with a man with a plastic bag? He was genuinely excited and passionate about these canaries. And so I thought I'll press in a bit further and have a bit longer of a conversation. And he started to talk about how each canary is unique and has its own traits. And he talked about the Canary Islands. And then he started talking about where he was from. And he said, for example, I'm from Rome. And he said, you'll find that anyone that from Rome will look like me. And so he was starting to explain that whoever we come from, we will look like that tribe. And so all of a sudden we're talking about Rome and Italy. And he said, so for example, you'll never find another person on earth that looks like me. And at this stage, I'm just pausing in my head saying, what is this conversation? And he said, because if you were walking around Rome, he would say, you'd find a statue. And the statue that I might look like is perhaps Constantine. And at that point, I was just like, oh my gosh, what have I just stepped into? And what is this weird conversation? But it also had elements of the unseen world. So many layers that left me wondering, what is this? Is this an otherworldly conversation, or is this just a madman? Anyway, I had had enough in that, and I was ready to leave. So I just thanked him and said all the best. And as I was leaving, he said, "Oh, by the way, my name is Roberto." So let me just unpack a little bit of that. My dad's name is Robert. I just had been talking to a guy, Roberto, who had brought in all these different layers of worship, canaries that sing to God, layers of worship that he dances like David, layers of worship that there's, wow, a new breed, a new thing coming that God is creating and that he's tending to this. That he talked about layers of history, Rome and Constantine. He talked about how he was building a cathedral in his backyard. And so I share all that today because for me, I went away just in a new conversation with Jesus, asking him about all those layers. And it kind of rattled me, but also reassured me. Did I feel strengthened? I felt more intrigued. And so that conversation began another conversation with Jesus that strengthened me. Well, exactly a month later, to the day, 12th of August was the first day I met Roberto. 12th of September, I'm walking in a totally different location. Again, my dad's deteriorating. So again, I'm in a place of vulnerability and just needing to talk to Jesus. And exactly a month later, Roberto turns up in a whole new location walking towards me. And this time, I'm shocked because I'm in a whole different location and I didn't expect to see him again. And he's walking towards me and he said, "Guess what? I've had to make even more room for those canaries." And it was like we were just picking up the same conversation that I had a month ago. And he said, "And guess what? I've also got to tell you that," let me just find my notes so that I can say it in a way. Here we go. That with these new breeds, they're all needing more room. And because they're all crowded in, I had to build even more onto my cathedral in the backyard. And then he said very directly, he said, "Did you know that God's looking for 10 people to change a city? But if only one person stands up, that's enough." Did you know, he said, that only one person standing up in a city can restore a city? He then started to say Aussies need to learn to move out of their reluctance, and they need to learn to rise and to fight for the restoration of their city. And he said God's restoring a city, but he needs some people to stand and fight for it. So this man that started telling me he danced like David and hearing songs of canaries increased his worship was now giving instruction to me. Would I be one that would stand for a city? At the end of that conversation, there was a lot more that he gave, which I won't share because of the time, but at the end of that conversation, he pulled out a business card and he gave it to me with his name on it and his role and his contact numbers, which of course I rang and there was no one there. But business card was actually another part that had connected to another part of my story, and that meant something. And so the fact that here I am in the middle of nowhere with a guy giving me a business card with his name on it, telling me to fight for the restoration of my city, just put a whole different perspective of what our kingdom business is about. What is it that angels are strengthening in kingdom business right now? And if this guy was an angel, then he was a weird one, but he definitely got me thinking about kingdom business. And so I just want to leave that there. There's a lot more to the story, but I've gone over time. And I hope that that's just been encouraging to you, that if God's doing something big in your world and in our world, we can expect He's going to give us all the guidance and the direction and the help that we need. So, yeah, I submit this to you. Enjoy or delete. Bless you all.